Welcome, everyone, and thank you for being here with us today for this important conversation. We at Sustainable Pittsburgh, with the CEOs for Sustainability and Vibrant Pittsburgh, are pleased to share some hands-on resources with you for advancing social equity in your organization, as well as to hear from local leaders who are leading action at their organizations. I'm going to take you quickly through our agenda. First, we'll cover what it means to promote social equity in your organization and share some local programs to help you do so. You'll hear from Sabrina Saunders-Mosby, President and CEO of Vibrant Pittsburgh, as well as Derek Schaffner, Senior Director of Programs and Services at Vibrant Pittsburgh, and Sarah Sangiovanni, Program Manager at Sustainable Pittsburgh. Next, I will have the pleasure of leading our expert panelists in a moderated discussion on how they are advancing social equity within their organization. With us today are Sarah Khalil, Director of Operations at Bike Share Pittsburgh, and Shelley Shear, Associate Executive Director of the Pittsburgh Promise. We will share a link to a recording of this webinar with everyone following our time together today. In addition to recognizing today's presenters, I also want to thank Sustainable Pittsburgh sponsors. Their support helps make this event possible. And with that brief introduction and review of our agenda, to get us started, I'd like to introduce Sabrina, President and CEO of Vibrant Pittsburgh, to kick us off.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Joylette. We are so proud to be a community partner with Sustainable Pittsburgh. It's important that our work is aligned, and this webinar is one example of how we are working to streamline and build efficiently our partnerships and our work. Vibrant is an economic development organization that was established to build a more diverse and inclusive Pittsburgh region by spearheading initiatives and partnering with our region's businesses to attract, retain, and elevate a diverse workforce. I'm excited for you to hear from Vibrant Pittsburgh Senior Director of Programs and Services, Derek Schaffner, and dive into our Vibrant Index in just a moment. We began assessing the DEI efforts of our region's businesses in 2019, and it's so refreshing to see just how far we've come. I'm excited for you to learn more, excited to be here and to partner. I'm now really happy to turn things over to Sarah from Sustainable Pittsburgh. Sarah, please join us.
Thanks so much, Sabrina. I really appreciate that. So from here, let's just level set on some terms. So what does it mean to promote social equity in your workplace? So we understand social equity in terms of workplace diversity, equity, and inclusion. Diversity refers to who's represented in the workplace. So in other words, who's recruited, who's hired, who's promoted within your organization. Diversity spans many different aspects, so everything from race to age to ability to religion and many others. These identities are all intersectional, meaning that people with different combinations of those identities will experience the world in unique ways and they'll have different opportunities. And in light of this, moving on, equity refers to treating all people fairly. This is distinct from treating all people equally, as an equity approach seeks to level the playing field by accounting for the different levels of opportunity that are afforded to different people and social groups. Last, inclusion refers to the degree to which workplace policies, practices, and culture enable all members of a workplace to make and be recognized for meaningful contributions. So when diversity, equity, and inclusion are integrated into all levels of an organization's policies, their culture, and their strategy, it becomes a place where everyone can participate, can thrive, and reach their full potential. We can move on, thank you. Research has shown consistently over time that diverse, equitable, and inclusive workplaces are better positioned for a number of ways. They're better positioned to win talent, improve decision-making, innovate, engage employees, and meet the expectations of stakeholders like consumers, policymakers, and partners. So I'm going to pass it off to Derek from Vibrant Pittsburgh to speak further to these benefits.
Thank you, Sarah. And as Sarah alluded to, for further background and the why as to further infusion and sophistication of diversity, equity, and inclusion within organizations. Numerous studies show the benefits of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and that translation into a business edge for respective organizations, whether it's from a profit standpoint, an innovation standpoint, or even from a resiliency standpoint. Many research studies have conveyed the necessity for such through the lens of all of those three lanes that I just mentioned there, with more companies being more profitable as the diversity and inclusion increases within their organization, same of which for innovation, with studies being conveyed here on the screen and the slide here. As we move to our next slide, despite the strong evidence for such, it's ever apparent that gaps and challenges still occur as it pertains to pay equity, as it pertains to inclusion and representation, with managers and executive level positions being predominantly held by white employees. The pay inequity as being listed here as well, persisting throughout the country, in addition to becoming ever more prominent in our city and our region as well, in Western Pennsylvania, as being conveyed in the Gender and Race Equity Report in 2019. So as we move to our next slide, even as gaps persist, the world is becoming ever more diverse, with more and more employees demanding efforts being taken on by organizations to accommodate. So to meet these demands and to capture the benefits of diversity and inclusion and create spaces where all can thrive, it is required to benchmark and evaluate and to know where to start and actionable items and steps to take to further cultivate those ecosystems to follow and to address these challenges. So with that in mind, I'll pass it back to Sarah as we discuss a couple of tools in doing so.
Great, thank you. So Sustainable Pittsburgh and Vibrant Pittsburgh both offer a suite of programs that are designed to help your organizations of all sectors and of all sizes advance their social equity performance to meet these really important imperatives and needs that we have, especially in our region. So these tools offered by Sustainable Pittsburgh and Vibrant Pittsburgh are designed to complement each other. So there are common actions, common questions, and common benchmarks that are included in each of them. This means that participating in one of our programs will make it easier and faster to participate in the other programs too, even across our organizations. Likewise, while all of the tools we're going to share with you today have been designed to be particularly relevant for Southwestern Pennsylvania businesses and organizations, they're also consistent with globally recognized resources. For example, they've been designed to be consistent with the global diversity, equity, and inclusion benchmarks. So moving forward to the next slide, I'll talk a little bit about what we offer at Sustainable Pittsburgh. So Sustainable Pittsburgh, we empower decision-making to help all businesses, local governments, and other organizations work together to build a fundamentally equitable, resilient, healthy, and prosperous region. Social equity is foundational to a sustainable region in so many ways, and it's featured really centrally in all of our programs and networks. So Sustainable Pittsburgh offers two kinds of recognition programs to help your organizations advance social equity. First, we have our designation programs. So as you can see on this slide, we offer 4 different designation programs that are tailored to different sectors. So we have designation programs geared towards municipalities, towards restaurants, towards retail shops, and as well as to workplaces. The workplace category includes all other different kinds of businesses and organizations, whether that's universities, nonprofits, other types of businesses, and so on and so forth. And all of those designation programs across all of those different sectors all have a common structure. They offer an online assessment that will help you measure your performance on a set of holistic sustainability topics. So of course, as we were talking about, that really is centrally includes many different social equity topics. So we have questions in these programs about hiring practices, about supplier diversity, and about human resource policies. The questionnaire, as you're going through it, not only allows you to assess your baseline performance in those areas, but it also provides step-by-step guidance on how to advance progress in those areas as well. And the way the program works is that you earn points for every question you answer, and those points add up, and you can earn a bronze, silver, gold, or platinum level sustainability designation that will last for 3 years. So those are the designation programs. But right now we're offering another program too, which we're calling our Social Equity Sprint. The Social Equity Sprint is a short-term competition that's open to all sectors, but this one is entirely focused on social equity. So participants, again, earn points by answering questions. All of the questions will be assessing things about diversity, equity, and inclusion in your workplace, and you will earn points for answering those questions. But instead of having those points lead up to a designation, what we'll do in the sprint program is use those points to name a top scorer from within each sector. So in this competition, we have different divisions, again, broken up by sector, and we will award a top scorer for municipalities, for restaurants, for shops, and for workplaces, which is, again, all of those other businesses and organizations that don't fit into those other categories. The Social Equity Sprint is ongoing right now, and the leaders within those different divisions are posted to our website bi-weekly. So you can still join into the sprint at any time prior to February 28th when the competition ends. So moving along to the next slide, I'll say a little bit more about how these programs can actually help you advance this work. So both the Social Equity Sprint and the designation programs will help you assess and advance the extent to which your workplace has integrated diversity, equity, and inclusion into all aspects of your organization. So this includes things like strategic planning, recruitment and hiring, human resource policies, marketing and communications, supply chains, employee engagement, and other topics too. I mentioned that we have different versions of our programs for different sectors. So those that have been designed for municipalities, it's also important to note that those programs include questions that are designed to help you advance social equity through the work that you do in your community as well. So we'll have questions asking about social equity and community development and planning. So for example, questions about things like food access, housing affordability, mobility justice. There are questions also about how equity is integrated into things like emergency preparedness and climate initiatives. So the municipality programs include both internal questions about the operations and practices of the municipality as an organization, as well as community development work. For all of the programs, the questions are tailored by sector, and they're also able to be tailored by information about your workplace that you share with us. So for example, whether you may own or rent your building, or whether your employees work remotely or in person. And so as a result of being able to share that information with us, and as a result of the features built into the program, you'll actually only be able to see questions in the program that are the most relevant, both for your sector and for unique aspects of your organization, like those I just mentioned. There's also overlap between the questions that we have in our social equity sprint and in each of our designation programs. So if you complete one of those programs, our system is actually able to import those overlapping answers that you provided from one program to the other, and that makes it quicker and easier for you to participate in and be recognized, both by getting designated and by doing a sprint. We've designed them to be things that can help you work together and enhance and amplify your impact through both of your programs. So moving on to the next slide, let's take just a few minutes to take a closer look at some of the questions that are included in that social equity sprint. So for this slide, as you can see, this question asks about how your organization can take steps to learn about its own impacts related to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and what social equity priorities we have in our region. And as you can see here, the answers are provided on the slide. You can see what sort of points are associated with each of those answer options. And the answer options reward many different levels of action, and that's intentional because we want these programs to be flexible for organizations that are both new to and maybe are more experienced with taking actions related to social equity. So no matter where you are in your path, this is a program that can help you take the next steps. I think this question is also a great example about how our programs, while they're very focused on helping you drive impact and achieve your goals, they're not only there to do that. They're also here to help you build up the capacity for knowing how to set goals that are the most strategic for your organization's unique circumstances and opportunities. So through doing the actions on this slide, you would be able to learn about what are the strengths, what are the opportunities, what are the threats posed to your organization related to social equity. So for example, in this question, as you can see, you can earn points for everything from taking part in a network or an event focused on equity. So you could all earn points in this program by coming to today's webinar. And other rewarded actions include things like doing stakeholder engagement or assessment processes to identify, again, those strengths and opportunities and threats related to your organization's unique social equity impacts and priorities. Moving along, I wanted to also be able to share a slide related to the community development aspect. So I mentioned earlier that municipalities will have access to questions related to promoting social equity in community spaces and services, as well as through their own internal operations as an organization. So for the local governments and communities attending today, here's an example of one of those questions focused on aging a place. And once again, you can see that the questions, it offers many different options to earn points for existing actions that you might be taking already, as well as ideas for ways that you can push your progress further. Moving ahead, in the last year only of all of our programs, 1,400 actions have already been taken to promote social equity. And those are all actions like those you just saw on the slides before. Through our social equity sprint, we're tracking the live progress of our current top competitors right now on our website. So these numbers are always going up. This image shows the current leaderboard just for the workplace division of our competition. And this is a moment in time. As I said, people are continuing to answer questions and earn points even as we speak. And there are other leaderboards for the municipalities, the restaurant, and the small business divisions of these competitions. So we'd love for you to get started. Getting designated and participating in the sprint can help your organization assess its performance, advance its actions, and be recognized for all the successful things you're doing. So to get started, please create an account at our website. The URL is listed here. I'm also very happy to meet with anybody who may be interested in finding out more and to provide assistance to help you succeed in our programs. Remember, the sprint closes on February 28th, so please plan to participate before that date. So for here, I will hand it off to Derek to discuss Vibrant Pittsburgh's tools for making progress.
Thank you, Sarah. And as we discuss the Vibrant Index, which is Vibrant Pittsburgh's annual diagnostic tool, in which it benchmarks current practices that organizations are fostering, and benchmarking that in comparison to the best practices of diversity, equity, and inclusion. We are currently on the fourth iteration of the Vibrant Index. It's open now, and I'll share ways in which others can get engaged and involved within the index later in this presentation. But just to get started here, painting some historical perspective and some context surrounding what the index is, what it measures, and then closing out with some data surrounding some of the findings that we've had from the previous iteration of 3.0, which closed in 2022. So with that in mind, just from a diagnostic standpoint, structurally, the Vibrant Index is free and open to all within the Southwestern Pennsylvania region. Regardless of size of your respective organization, sector, or industry, this is a tool in which you can really accurately and comprehensively capture and benchmark where your organization is as it pertains to a spectrum of diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. And as listed here, there are 9 pillar areas that are assessed, spanning from written commitment, i.e. the signing of pledges, the full-on public commitment of diversity, equity, and inclusion taken on by leadership, all the way through the ways in which your organization is tangibly engaging and connecting externally with respective communities by way of education programs or community engagement projects, community service, you name it, the ways in which your brand is externally engaging with respective communities and everything in between. Benefits and policies, the provision of employee networks, leadership. So as mentioned, creates a really comprehensive view and stamp as to where your organization stands, and where and how organizations can move forward with the stewardship and the progression of this work year after year after year. As diversity, equity, and inclusion is an ever-changing and ever-flowing work, this tool is never stagnant. So it will continue to develop, and it will continue to audit and benchmark best practices year after year after year, to continue to move the work forward within our region, and be a model for talent, to find Western Pennsylvania as a destination and not a stop within their respective talent journeys. As we move to our next slide here, with that in mind, vibrant champions are identified year after year. And for 3.0, we had the largest sample of vibrant champions in the history of the index, with 11 organizations being identified for this designation. So to be a vibrant champion and to be acknowledged in this capacity, you must score 95% or higher on all of the 9 pillar areas that I just went over prior in this slide here. And as mentioned, 11 organizations, and we are fortunate to have the Pittsburgh Promise here as part of the panel discussion to follow here, to talk about some of the works and efforts that they're leading and stewarding. But that implying champions aren't leading perfect work. They're leading really strong work as it pertains to diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts internally, but also externally, as mentioned, with engagement of communities as well. So as we move to our next slide here, we're going to jump into a little bit of the data and the key findings that we found within the sample set that we had for 3.0. So as mentioned here, what this is going to give is really tangible insight as to the state of the region as it pertains to snapshots of particular areas. Same of which is provided to respective organizations that participate. You receive an individual one-on-one session with our subject matter experts post-participation, in addition to a full summary report to help support with strategic planning and moving and advancing this work. It's one thing to benchmark. Our mission and our efforts are to continue to steward this and move this work forward year after year to, again, build future forward workplaces for our region and for the talent that is going to be part of these respective organizations. So with that in mind, some of the key findings of our sample from 3.0, there were 104 organizations that participated within the Vibrant Index 3.0, with projections of much more coming for 4.0 in this upcoming sample as well. 96% of participants had a written non-discrimination policy, and that's a great start. Policies are great in ways of which for facilitation and creating that ecosystem for organizations to thrive and in terms of inclusion. However, 40% of participants reported offering trans-inclusive healthcare benefits, again, as being a leading diagnostic and establishing, but also conveying those best practices. This is an area of opportunity for our region to further foster ecosystems of inclusion from a policy standpoint. However, there are really strong marks as well, as organizations are providing paid time for their employees to participate in employee business resource groups and utilizing and leveraging those groups to further cultivate an environment of inclusion within their internal organization as well. As mentioned, there are opportunities here for the region and collectively and individually organizations to move this work forward with the 2 points listed here at the bottom. First and foremost is going to be paid parental leave for families and groups that are hoping to build families and spend time together with those that they truly care about. With 55% of organizations providing paid parental leave, that's critical for those respective individuals that are hoping to build those families as such. And then additionally, which has been a continual challenge for our region, is supplier diversity. And it starts with a plan. 59% of participating organizations in our data set from 3.0 don't have that. It's critical to start in that capacity. So as we move to our next slide here, we'll further dig into supplier diversity. As mentioned, this has been the largest area of opportunity for our region 3 years in a row, as it pertains to creating plans and building more resilient and robust supply chains, as it pertains to procurement and their spend for organizations. So as you can see here in the graphic, the 60 organizations of our participating sample don't even have a plan. And this doesn't have to be a robust plan or process. It can just be a commitment. I am going to allocate 3% of my organizational spend to diverse businesses, things of that nature. That's a starting plan, so to speak. However, you see some metrics surrounding the commitment to plans specifically surrounding minority-owned businesses and women-owned businesses as it pertained to the data set that we had from last year. So as mentioned, large area of opportunity for our region, and continuing to move this forward for, again, more resilient supply chains and more diverse spend, so to speak, as it pertains to procurement. So as we move to our next, the second particular question that I really want to highlight, and an area and lens that I really want to highlight, is the ways in which organizations are engaging and recruiting talent. This is critical as we continue to lose more and more talent in our region year after year after year. This has been a continual trend, and in ways to do this is to cultivate and to combat respective areas as it pertains to engagement and recruitment of talent. So here are a couple of different measures and ways in which organizations can further build out inclusive hiring and recruitment policies as it pertains to moving organizations through their interviewing process. And that is by way of anonymizing resumes, providing blind or written interview sessions, standardizing interview questions, or providing hiring panels. And you can see the rates in which the participating organizations were doing just that, to help mitigate bias and to ensure that organizations are taking on the most inclusive policies and procedures as it pertains to recruiting and engaging talent here. So as we move to our next and final slide here, what I want to do is really create an opportunity for your organization to become engaged with the Vibrant Index. As mentioned, the tool is open now, and will stay open for 2 more weeks. So there is some urgency in terms of doing or becoming engaged with the tool. And here is a QR code in addition to a link in the chat here in which you can just voice, hey, I'm interested, or I would like more information surrounding the Vibrant Index, in which our team can follow up with resources, with deliverables to bring you up to speed and really paint a full and more robust picture as to what the index is and how it can support your respective organization in moving this work forward. So with that in mind, I'll create time to pass over to Joylette as she facilitates our panel discussion.
Thank you, Derek, very much. And I am pleased to be back here today with Sarah Khalil, Director of Operations at Bike Share Pittsburgh, and Shelley Shear, Associate Executive Director of the Pittsburgh Promise. Bike Share Pittsburgh is currently a top competitor in Sustainable Pittsburgh's Equity Sprint, as mentioned earlier, and the Pittsburgh Promise has twice been recognized, as was also mentioned, as a Vibrant champion. So we're here really with leaders in this space in the region, and I couldn't be more excited about the conversation. So I'll start by asking each of our panelists to take a couple minutes to introduce themselves before we dive into some questions. So Sarah and Shelley, would you like to take a few minutes? Maybe let's start with Sarah.
Hey everybody, thanks for having us here today. My name is Sarah Khalil. I'm the Director of Operations of Bike Share Pittsburgh. We operate the POGO system here in Pittsburgh. So we have about 37 stations around. We have some pedal bikes and e-bikes. And yeah, we've been in this space since 2015. We were previously Healthy Ride before.
Great, thanks. And Shelley?
Hi, thanks so much for allowing us to be part of this conversation. I've been at the Pittsburgh Promise since 2016. Most of you probably know that the Promise has been part of the higher ed, workforce on-ramping system in Pittsburgh since 2008. So we're closing in on 15 years. We provide post-secondary scholarships to graduates of Pittsburgh Public Schools to pursue college, trade school, community college, whatever their post-secondary plan is, we support them in doing that within the state of Pennsylvania. We also do direct service work with students in 3 PPS high schools, and that's been an exciting part of our journey over the last couple of years.
Great. Well, thanks so much again to both of you for being here. And I want to start in with a couple of questions. And as I'm doing that, I encourage everyone to use the Q&A box throughout this discussion to share any questions, because we will have an opportunity to ask questions of our panelists. But let me start here with Sarah, actually. And let's talk about Bike Share Pittsburgh, which has recently undergone a strategic update to its model and brand with a public commitment to putting equity and inclusivity at the forefront. Can you talk about what process internally happened at Bike Share Pittsburgh to establish that public commitment? And in what ways has this commitment to social equity changed your organization?
Yeah, so when we decided that we were going to go through this big process to replace our hardware and update our brand, we also knew it was a good opportunity to improve the way we're working on our social equity goals. And so early on, our community outreach team established that in order for us to be accountable about all these things we're talking about internally, it would be a really good idea if we created a space where everyone we knew, so meaning our stakeholders, folks who are either helping people in the community get on pogo bikes, or I guess at that time healthy ride bikes, or people that were already riding with us, to join us regularly. So we had monthly and then eventually quarterly meetings to help us keep ourselves accountable to those goals that we wanted. So before we even launched the system, we would take things to them like new pricing structure and be like, what do you think of this? And actually, there were a lot of great things that came out of that. So for instance, just talking about pricing, something we always knew we wanted to do and something our industry struggles with often is offering a cash payment service. These hardware, the kiosk units, they don't have, it's not like the Port Authority or, where you can just slide your dollar bill in. They don't make that product. And so we had to get creative about how to do that. And with the Community Coalition, all these stakeholders in the room, or virtual room, it was during 2020, we brought up the idea that we thought was pretty good. That we were we can have cash in our office. We can offer a space where someone can walk in Monday through Friday, give us cash, and we'll set up an account. And we put up one of those Zoom polls that's what do you think about this? And unanimously, it was this is terrible. That's not very accessible. And it was one of those moments where okay, everyone else in the industry is sort of doing something like this, but what can we do to be better? And then that conversation just drove us to try something a little bit more intentional. And so we launched with Cash App, which is more of a creative solution. So people can pay with cash via the app at any store, any location, anytime, rather than having to come to our office when we're here, which isn't very convenient. So there's just kind of a little thing that came out of that. But generally speaking, having that group of stakeholders really helped us stay accountable. And moving forward, we're even going to continue to do that now that we're out of the planning process. So very helpful for us.
That's great. Love that approach to both really meaningful and deep community engagement, as well as the addressing of, those are really important accessibility concerns, certainly. So thank you. And I want to turn to Shelley as well, because I know that the Pittsburgh Promise is striving to close opportunity gaps and fuel a diverse and prepared regional workforce. What are the biggest challenges that you see to doing that? And how have you been planning for those challenges?
Thanks for that question. As you already shared, infusing Pittsburgh with diverse talent is embedded in our mission and our vision for the region. So we feel very strongly that we need to lead by example in that space. And what does it mean to have an inclusive workplace culture? What does it mean to really elevate the wonderful and amazing students and scholars and staff that we have as part of our team. So the first challenge is continuing to do good work ourselves, you know, as the organization evolves, to continue to be sensitive to where do we need to grow. This is not a one and done process. It's ongoing, and it includes conversations with our team about what do we need to do differently? How should we be responding to different situations or opportunities? So certainly I celebrate our success and know that it's hard work to keep up with the standard as it grows and evolves. In terms of, you know, the stretch goal is really looking beyond our own organization to adjacent organizations where we're influencers, where we're partners. And, you know, that can range from the high schools in which we're working. So infusing the culture of the school with a broader understanding of DEI. It includes our corporate donors and partners. You know, we're sending our students to them, and we want to ensure that we're sending our students to a place where they're welcomed, feel safe, and they can thrive. So it includes conversations with our donors, our partners, our colleges, and just to make sure that all of the systems in which we are operating, that we're doing our part to infuse those conversations with more awareness around these topics.
And what I really appreciate about that answer is that there's not complacency there, right? That you're doing so much, but also looking for ways to continuously improve those outcomes, which is perhaps no coincidence that as for the reason that you've twice been named a Vibrant Champion, scoring above 95%. And then above the 95th percentile in areas like equity, commitment, and benefits and policies and talent engagement improvement. So thank you. Definitely appreciate that continuous striving. I want to come back to Sarah and talk about your work as well, because you're currently a top scorer in the Sustainable Pittsburgh Social Equity Sprint. So what lessons have you learned about how to effectively achieve your goals in areas like workplace benefits, benefits and pay, supplier diversity, and policies?
Yeah, so the Sustainable Pittsburgh Social Equity Sprint has been really nice for us. I think if we had done this like year one, it would really be telling of all the things we've done over the years. But it was nice to run through kind of all those very practical things that you could be doing and see like where you're doing really well, and just even still get ideas like, you know, year 8 of what you can continue to improve. And so yeah, that's kind of like, you know, when you want to improve these policies internally, it's really good to think of like, we have an employment guideline, and that is what we use. That's like our sort of like contract with our each of our staff. And so we add to that over the years. It's like a living document. There's so many versions of it at this point. We just have like a folder that has all the different dates next to it. But the reason is that we will come up with ideas, things that we want to implement, things that we get as feedback from our employees, and we're not always sure the best way to implement it. You can kind of look at stuff like parental leave, for instance. You can do a ton of research on that. You can see what the city's doing, the state's doing, you can see what other nonprofits are doing. And then at the end of the day, you can implement a policy that you think is really good, speaking from experience. And then when you put it out to your staff, you actually start to see like, oh, it doesn't work in the way that we thought or the way that we wanted. And so what we'll often do is we have monthly staff meetings. We'll launch those new policies or in draft at those all staff meetings, and then we'll give people the opportunity to really experience them and give us feedback that is more thoughtful, rather than just like in the meeting be like, is this good? Cool, we'll launch it. And so that's been really helpful. So like back to parental leave, when we did that, there was one person in mind that we were making it for, a gentleman that was having a baby, because up until that point, we just hadn't had any babies in the office. And so we made this parental leave policy. It gave 6 weeks time off. And then he kind of came back and was like, you know what, actually, I'd like to take some time off, but maybe use a little bit more of this in a flexible way so that I can like go to doctor's appointments and things like that with the baby. And so that was like an easy yes, you know, we can make that modification, and that's still our policy today and has worked for some other folks now. So just kind of one little thing. But I guess as you go into this and thinking about this with your coworkers and in your space, you're going to have all these things that are unique to you, but just kind of keep in mind that it's always going to be changing, and there's always ways to improve it, and you're kind of constantly learning in this space. It's not just one and done. So yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. And I love that answer as well in terms of continuing that engagement and always trying to look for where you can make those improvements in process and in that engagement space. I'm going to switch actually to a little bit of, so we have a question in Q&A. So I'm going to switch to audience Q&A and encourage everyone watching to continue to add those questions into the Q&A box. We've gotten a question that says, what can companies do to successfully attract and maintain talent? And I have a couple thoughts on this, but I want to open it to our panelists too, to maybe field that question. Any early thoughts from either of you?
We actually did it was a grant funded research a couple years ago through America's Promise, where we were charged to answer the question, what makes a welcoming workplace for young people of color? And, we have a few. So we've explored that question with corporate partners and with our scholars and our staff. And, there's a lot of signaling that goes on in terms of what's on your website. When somebody looks to see what the employer's like, do they see people that look like them on the website? If not, huge red flag. Our students really look for who's in the space that's the next level above them. Is there demonstrated pathways to excelling as a young professional of color? And that challenged several of our employers because their strategy had been like a bottom-up strategy, right? We're going to hire these young folks so that we can infuse diversity into our workforce. And the young folks are saying, we need to see evidence of executive, or at least management level leadership in your organization for us to feel like you're truly committed to building an inclusive workplace culture. So that was one lesson that was hard to hear and important to have been heard.
I was going to say, I think for us, still improving on this always, but something we've done, of course, is like update our job descriptions to be a little less like text heavy, have some more photographs of our staff, of us working, things like that. Definitely like limit the requirements that aren't really necessary. When we first started posting field jobs, they required a bachelor's degree, not really sure why. So like we dropped some stuff like that. We also have, it's almost more of like a sales pitch on our website to say, these are all of our benefits that we offer. Because yes, I was having a conversation, I think in 2020 with someone who is a bit younger than me about a job here. And they were like, so like, what are you offering me though? Like, I know this is the money, what else? And that was the moment we were like, okay, we need to put all these bullet points of like the things that we can offer to staff. And we've also over time too tried to make just our space more welcoming and provide like opportunity. Of course, yes, we want people to work when they're at work, but opportunity to like have social engagement and fun with staff and coworkers too. So we do quarterly outings that are usually something that's a group activity and really nice. And then we try to more irregularly just do like casual kind of bike rides and things like that too. And I think that when you're talking to a potential employee, that can also be something to kind of help them decide between one organization or another, whether you want more of like that nonprofit, more flexible position where you're working really hard, but also may have these other perks, or another job that might have like, I don't know, whatever the other more corporate things you're looking for, like 401k and this package. So.
Yeah, those are all really, I think, important examples too of different things that you can do. And I'm struck by, some of the things Derek was talking about earlier, right? There are a number of things you can do during the hiring process that can make for a more equitable hiring process, from how you're crafting that job description, as you mentioned, Sarah, to, how you're talking about this within and outside the company. Then I think there's also what both of your comments have kind of raised, and I think is also equally important, is that maintain piece in terms of maintaining diverse talent, making sure that those career pathways are visible, making, if there's an opportunity for mentorship, for people to to understand that there's a company commitment to successful career pathways for all employees is really critically important. And I think that there's multiple ways to accomplish that. I think for a long time, people have focused a lot on the hiring side and less so on that, what are you building in terms of policies? We already talked about some of the benefits and policies that are also important. So I think yeah, there's a lot in that space. And I think all of the organizations engaged in today's webinar have good insights and lessons to be taken on how to do that. I am looking at another question that came in as I was talking to talk about the same issue. Can we talk about retention as well as hiring? The talent market is very competitive right now. And I think that kind of keys into what we were just talking about, is there are a lot of pieces here, and it's not all about salary, right? It is really about, is this company offering a workplace that is, helpful to my life and my situation? Is this company investing in me? Is this company, offering pathways and community, and increasingly is aligned with my values, and lots of different pieces. But I'm talking a lot, and I don't know if our panelists want to add anything else to that conversation. I apologize for that.
I would like to add to retention, and I'm not sure, I haven't directly studied this, but I think that's something that helps probably with us. We have a smaller staff, and so that projection of like, you're going to lead this organization one day is less realistic when there's 10 people and like the 3 leaders have been on the staff for 7 years. So we talk a lot in our performance reviews. We do 6-month reviews where we talk about growth and what that individual person is seeking from this job. And that is so illuminating sometimes, because you might have someone who's in a role that you don't really think would have a lot of crossover with another role. So like a mechanic might have like a really strong desire to talk more to the public and to do some more community outreach things. And so kind of figuring out what your staff member needs and is wanting to grow more as an individual too, and how you can tie that into the business is super, super important. Yeah, that's all I have.
And I was going to say the same thing as Sarah. I think it really is important to have those one-on-one conversations. And we're bigger now. We're big. We have 25 people. We used to be a lot smaller, but even in that, it's important to say this may not be your lifetime position, but what is it that you feel called to do now? And what do you feel called to do later? And how can we prepare you for what's next? And how can we help you get there? Whether it's at the Pittsburgh Promise or it's somewhere else, that your time's valuable, and we want to help you grow and thrive in whatever space that means to you.
And we're seeing another question come in. How can companies utilize programs such as the Pittsburgh Promise, Shelley, let's stay with you for just a minute, to create pipelines for young people to entry-level positions or some summer internships?
Give me a call. Find my email on the website. We obviously connect with a lot of college students and high school students. We have a job board that we're just in the process now of refreshing. We share out opportunities formally through our social media platforms, informally because we know a lot of students and we can do some matching just because of relationships we have. We do career exploration days at high schools where we'd love to have employers come and provide a hands-on, tangible example of what their career or their company opportunities look and feel like, to that 9th grader who may have no idea what it means to be a production crew for a television station, or to learn how to fly a drone, or some of the non-traditional jobs that may not even be on the radar of our young people. So we welcome those connections, and please reach out to me on email or give me a call. All that information's on our website. I'd love to have another conversation with you.
Great, thank you. And here's a question then for Bike Share for Sarah. Bike Share Pittsburgh also has a strong commitment to working with diverse local suppliers. What has made it possible for you to recruit and build those relationships?
Yeah, so like Derek said a while ago, we just made a paragraph that was our supplier diversity statement. And we kind of went from there. I think when we first launched, it was more like, let's get whoever we can get here to do the thing. And then after we had a moment to breathe, we were like, okay, we have someone who we've contracted for, let's say, like electrical. Maybe we didn't put a lot of time into thinking about that. So now that we have time, let's and we're at a point maybe of contract renewal or something. Let's look at who else in our area does this. A lot of times I'll talk to like other organizations that are similar to us. So, if we need an accountant, I might ask someone at another nonprofit, who they're using. There's actually a lot of really great like local resources that you can tap into, like different, like there's, for instance, one network of folks that is just nonprofit operator director kind of folks. So like in that group, we often are swapping ideas for different diverse suppliers that we can work with and things like that. But basically, anyway, back up. So in thinking about that, a lot of times what we'll do is we'll do a little research into who's around and who's available, and then we'll try to get like, say, 3 quotes. And so we'll make a decision based on like who staffs that organization and what are their commitments to the community. Are they doing community work, that sort of thing? And then kind of think about price secondary. And we'll also kind of toss into the mix, because we're ordering a lot of physical things too. Like, is it local to Pittsburgh? Can it be made and produced in Pittsburgh? Or do we have to order it, from another country or somewhere far away too? So all of those things factor in.
And those conversations are all so important to have, and when you've made that commitment, absolutely. I think we probably have time for a couple more questions, maybe just one. We'll see where this one takes us. I'm wondering if you can both comment on what's one tool, network, or piece of advice that you would offer peers who are looking to drive DE&I at their organizations.
Well, we're talking about the Vibrant Index and the sustainable tool. So obviously those are great. We actually haven't done much with the Vibrant Index yet. We just joined, but we're excited to dive into that one too. But like even the social equity sprint, we're one of the top scorers, and we have a lot of these policies already in place. But since starting that, there's still even like 1 or 2 things that we set as future goals and we're actually implementing now. So I think that's a really, really great tool. But if you're just sort of starting, or you're like, kind of like, where do I start? What can I focus on to begin? There's a lot of different resources out there and tools, and it kind of changes year to year. And so you got to think about what you want for your organization and what makes the most sense there. But I think just like to have like a temperature check, you could just start by looking at what you're paying folks. Are you paying women more? Are you paying BIPOC folks more? Probably not. Hopefully you're not paying them less. You could look at benefits. Are your leadership roles getting better benefits than some of your like other roles at the organization? I think if you're really thinking about DE&I and like where to start, that's kind of like the first place before you start to build out other policies and things to benefit the staff. Just start with that and start to build upon it and have conversations with them and get feedback, and you'll be going in the right direction in no time.
I agree with Sarah. Just start is the most important thing. Just start. Don't get paralyzed by it being too big. Sarah, I agree with all the tools you mentioned. I will add a third, that CEO Action or CEO for Action. It used to be part of the Vibrant Pittsburgh Index, and I haven't completed mine for this year, so I don't know if it's still there. But by your CEO signing on as a signatory to that statement, you have access to an incredible portfolio of tools through CEOs for Action. And they have conferences, they have conversations for different C-suite executives for you to implement with teams, with staff-wide, with different issues around supplier diversity. And it's a lot, and it's very rich. So that's one more tool that if you're looking for something maybe more tangible in terms of best practices and actual examples from other organizations like you, I would suggest looking at CEO Action.
Thanks. And I'm wondering, let's see, we have just a couple minutes left, and maybe this could be a quick answer. I'll challenge you to see if you can give a quick answer to this question that's come in. The COVID crisis has illuminated many challenges and opportunities in workplaces. How has the crisis of these past years helped advance your equity goals? And what else needs to happen for real progress? That is maybe not a quick question. You both had the same reaction to that.
I think one thing we all came away with is just an awareness that people are in different places and a reminder to stay flexible and to focus on outcomes and deliverables, not inputs. And that is a message that resonates just with being a good leader, but especially being an inclusive leader, focusing on outputs and not getting caught up in the minutia of how it gets done, celebrating it is done and honoring that performance.
Yeah, I agree with that. Just thinking back to that time, definitely we kind of had to all adjust and meet folks where they were at. And I think we're definitely stronger now as a result of it and have better like lines of communication, for instance, from having to all kind of be split up and get back together. So yeah.
Yeah. And I think, there's been a lot of attention and importance on these topics across this time period as well. And that's been, I think, really helpful in making sure that we can stay focused on these critically important issues around inclusivity, around diversity and equity, and keep continuing to move that forward, especially in our region. So I think I should probably be wrapping up our panel about now. I want to very much thank our panelists for being with us today. And I am going to turn it back over, I believe, to Sarah and Derek to close us out.
Thank you so much, Joylette, Sarah, and Shelley, for that really, really fantastic conversation. I'm so glad that you were able to be with us today and share your experiences from within your organizations. And thank you to everybody else for attending today's webinar and for your commitment to creating a more socially equitable region. For more information about the programs that we shared today, for help getting involved, please reach out to me from Sustainable Pittsburgh and to Derek from Vibrant Pittsburgh. And remember that February 28th is the deadline for both the Social Equity Sprint and the Vibrant Index 4.0. So please take advantage of these programs while they're still available this year. Derek, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Just a reiteration, thank you all for your engagement and commitment towards advancing workplace development and DEI within the region here. It's critically important to do so, to further cultivate those future forward workplaces, as we're continuing to reiterate here. So thank you so much for your commitment with doing so, and reiterating, as Sarah mentioned, with both of these tools closing at the end of the month. So encourage all to become engaged if you're not already, and to follow up with the two of us to further move this work forward in your organization and within our region.